So all you have to do is track the shot, set the tracker operation to match move, merge BG only, draw a polygon shape, and then change the tracker to FG only to make the tracker do all the hard work. Here's the result of a machine-learned magic mask cutout, and then here's the stabilized tracking-assisted rotoscope result using technology from 1997. This is so much cleaner. Chapters are marked for you, and the tutorial footage is up on creativevideotips.com/thecuttingclub if you want to follow along. So download the clip and let me teach you how to rotoscope a pixel-perfect mask on a stabilized plate, even in the free version of DaVinci Resolve Fusion. Oh, and towards the end, I'll show you how you can access the Fusion mask directly in the color page as well. So the shot we're going to stabilize and rotoscope today, it's just a rectangular sign. Yeah, this could be done in the color page easily, but the techniques I'm going to show you, you can use this on much more difficult shots that you'll probably encounter in the real world. Let's get to the Fusion page. I'm going to click the Fusion button, or you could hit Shift 5 to get there. And I'm going to change the layout like I always do. I don't like this left-right view. I like to go top-down. Fills up my viewer space a lot nicer on my monitor. So I'm going to go to Workspace, Layout Presets, Fusion Presets, Mid-Flow Vertical. With this, I just choose the viewer that I want to see. I just want to see the bottom one. So I click this button right over here, this rectangle button. And then I do some node organization management over on the right. Things have sort of fallen off. If you use the middle mouse button, you can sort of pan around in your image, and then Control or Command mouse wheel lets you zoom. So I'm putting my media out at the bottom, my media in one at the top, and I'll work from this top down. I also want to see the thumbnails. That's kind of a nice thing to see. So I'll right click over here and I'll say Force Source Tile Pictures. And as I load this into the viewer by just clicking and dragging and releasing, you'll see the state of what node you're looking at up top there. Now you can see a thumbnail preview update, which is really nice. So let's get to tracking this thing. With media in one selected, that means there's an orange box around it. If you take a look over here, you'll just type in Shift Space on the keyboard, Shift Space, and that pulls up your Select Tool window. I'm going to choose TRA for Tracker. That's just your standard tracker tool. Hit Return, or you can click the I button if you want to use the mouse. It adds it right in the flow right after. So the footage goes directly into the background of the tracker. Now in Resolve 19, the default tracker is called IntelliTrack. So if I zoom over here, IntelliTrack, it uses some sort of machine learning AI sort of thing. I don't know how to control it. I don't always know what the results are going to be. So I'm going to instead use, over in the inspector, you'll see there's a typical like standard old point tracker. Click that and it gives us a different sort of pattern box over here. This is the old one. That's what I want to teach on because it's also available in the free version of Resolve. So the other thing to know about this tracker, if you just want a piece of history, this is the same technology used in the 80s for missile guidance systems, believe it or not. That's what it was first used for before visual effects. Now to get rid of the IntelliTrack, I'm just coming over here, hitting the delete button, and now that's gone. Now the way trackers work is it's basically going to look at one pattern area and try to match that up to other frames. So over time, it's going to try to follow that for you, and it can do it at a subpixel level based off of contrast. So what I need to do is find a high contrast area on this sign if I want to stabilize the sign, which is our goal in this first step, the most important step. And so what I'm going to do is move this tracking point to the upper left corner of the sign for one of my tracking points. And the way you move these is, if I zoom in here, the upper left section of there has a little dot. You click on that, and that's how you actually move the tracking points in Resolve Fusion for the non-IntelliTrack version. So I'm going to move that up here to the little corner. I'm going to zoom in, and actually I can shrink this box down so that it's looking at even a tinier section of it. Basically, the middle box is what it's looking at, the pattern, and then the outer box is what it's searching for if it were to lose that pattern between frames. The most important thing to know about is this tracker. It works off of different channels that you can assign. And so that means right now we're looking at the color channel if you look up here at the top of the viewer, but you could also look at the red channel and see how much contrast does that have. You could hit B to see the blue channel. The red channel has a lot of contrast. So another way, rather than clicking through and looking at the channels up here, is in the tracker tool itself. If I load the tracker into the window, and I'm going to get it in there by just clicking down, holding, and dragging it across and releasing it in this window. Now, I will point out, once you cross this line, it looks like you've lost it, but you haven't. As soon as you release, you should see up at the top here the state of the flow, the state of the node that you're looking at right up top there. So over here in the right, if I open my flashlight, you can see 0.2. It's giving us a little preview of what the channel is looking at to do the tracking. And by default, it's choosing the luminance channel. It's looking at the brightness, not a specific red, green, or blue channel. And I can change that. I can control it. So, for instance, if I take a look at what the red channel looks like, it actually has more contrast, like we looked at before, than just even the luminance channel does. So I might use that. There's also an automatic mode over here, which might give good results, but I'll just try to choose the red channel. We'll see what that does. Now to start the tracking is just right up here at the top. We have track left, track right. We'll just hit track right, and we'll see the thing move along. Now, if you don't see it move along, it means your tracker is not loaded into the window, and you can check to see how good the track was down here as well with this little flipbook preview. So in the inspector, this is one way that you can check it. If you just go frame by frame, in fact, you can even, if you wanted to, use these frame by frame buttons to sort of scan through to see if there's any problem. This had rolling shutter, so maybe there was a frame or two that was bad. Let's just pretend that this was perfect. I have another tutorial about correcting tracking data with a guy walking through a pole that I will link up right now to get to that if you want to learn how to modify and fix tracking point tracker data. Now, to get another point on here so we can stabilize this even better than it'll be able to, let's go back to our first frame, which is the first frame we started tracking from, add another point in the list. And once we add a new point, it's going to drop it somewhere on our screen. It's down here in the lower right. I'm going to drag and move this to the lower right of the sign and kind of do the same thing I did before. I'll make this a little bit smaller. I might tell it to track just the red channel only. And here's a key important thing to pay attention to. If I hit track right now, it's going to retrack anything in the list that has a checkbox. So if I don't want to retrack this first point that I already did, just click the checkbox to deselect it, and now it'll just be tracking 0.3 as I push the forward button, and just let that sort of run and rip right on through. Now that we have it tracked, what are we going to do? We're going to stabilize using this tracking data. So I'm going to enable my original point, and you can actually, if you go to this state, it makes it active but not editable. I'll just turn it to the checkbox so you can see the patterns there on the screen for both of those. We'll assume that the tracking held perfectly fine. If it didn't, again, you can go in here and manually move this little point here, or delete it. You can use gradient extrapolation. Again, check out that other tutorial for that. I'll zoom this window to fit. Command F, Control F will do that on a Windows machine. It's not Z. If you hit Z, hit C to go back to color. But from this point on, we need to stabilize this. So we've got tracking data, but we haven't stabilized it yet. And rotoscoping works best when you look at a stabilized image. So we go to Operation. Operation, instead of being none, will change to Match Move. And the thing you want to choose is Merge set to BG only. With Merge up here set to BG only, that's your settings. What that's doing is it's stabilized everything off of a specific reference frame. Well, what reference frame is it choosing, and how can you change that? How do you choose what that reference frame is? Well, the default is underneath the match move settings down here for reference, and it's set to the start frame as the default. So that means it's going to keep this thing stabilized based off of the reference frame, based off of the data between those 2 points, which means at frame 0, you'll notice the frame is full. Like if I turn my transparency here so you can see the checker underlay, it's moving. Computer's slowing down a little. It's moving everything around from that first frame, so it's going to make it easy to draw my polygon shape to do the rotoscoping. Now, there's also reference frame instead of start frame, which is your first frame, you have end frame. So what that means is at the very end frame, now this one is locked off. So if this is a better frame for you to draw your shape on, you would choose reference frame set to end instead of reference frame to start. And then you have one other choice here, and this one is kind of confusing. And what this other one says is it says well, there's two others. One that's called start and end is for stabilization in terms of like getting less jitter in the camera, not for like locking it off, which is what we're trying to do. The other one I want to point out is the one called reference select time. What select time means in here is the frame you started tracking on is actually the select time. And you can't do this after the fact. You can't choose a new select time. So What this means is if for some reason you need to draw your polygon shape on a frame that's not the first frame or the last frame of your sequence, you need to initiate your tracking on the frame that you're going to draw your polygon on, and that would be set to reference select time. Now there's a tool called Tracker Plus that lets you change this later on. It's in Reactor. Log that away in your head in case you want it, but for now we're just going to leave our reference set to start frame and everything is locked off. All right, so step 2 is going to be to draw our shapes, and we have two main shape drawing tools here in Fusion. One's the polygon and one's the B-spline. I'm choosing polygon today because this has hard edges. B-splines are great for organic things that have natural curves, so think like humans, fingers. I get roto a lot. But I'm going to choose polygon, shift space, that pulls up our tool picker again. Start typing PLY, POLY, got polygon, hit return. And when I draw polygons, I like to not have them attached to anything. This is so that you can see what you're working on when you're working on it. But here's another key node-based thing to think about when you're working over here. You can look at a node, but actually work on another node, meaning I have tracker 1 loaded into the viewer over here, but I'm actually going to work on polygon. So you can see I have the orange box selected on the polygon, but tracker 1 is the one that's loaded. What that means is I'm looking at the tracker through our match move BG only, our stabilized version, but I can still draw if I select polygon. I get this crosshair with my cursor. So I'm going to draw a rectangle around here, and the important thing is that I draw it on my reference frame for our match move, which is our start frame, frame 0. So I'm on frame 0, you can see that down here. I'm going to start drawing, and as I zoom in, you can see the power of Fusion is I can click and I can get precise. I can go in really close and get little notches that would be harder to do in the color page, right? So if I just click, I'll drag down there to that corner, go over here to this corner real quick. Maybe I just go to here and here. And then if I want to close it up, we can either get close to the end here. It makes a little circle O to close it, or the shortcut to make sure you know you're closing the shape, Shift O will close up a polygon. And now we have a shape there. And if I want to play this throughout, you'll see it mostly sticks as I go through. This is frame 79, the last frame. Those corners stick nice. The others don't because there is perspective to it. Now, this will work with things better if there's not a big perspective change like there was in this. But we can fix this easily in the next step by doing some very simple animation. Now, before I even get to that point, I want to show you if you need to draw a more complex shape. One thing I would typically do is still on this reference frame, just make sure your simple shapes overlap. And you can use there's a multi-poly tool, but I just like to use multiple polygon shapes. So what I would do is just shift space, POLY, here's another polygon. And let's say we needed to get the bottom of this shape as well. Just make sure there's overlap. So I'm going to start a little bit higher, draw this out. I'm just clicking. If you just click, it makes a hard point. And if you click and drag, it makes a soft point. And if you ever need to change between those two, okay, that closed it up. You can hit Shift S, makes it smooth, or Shift L will make it linear again if you need a hard point. So we can see the result of this shape looks like this, the result of that shape looks like that. You can add these together by just dragging one mask to the other mask. And this is the way to sort of build things up with overlap. And the other thing that nobody told me for a long time, if you use shapes like this and you do animation with them, it's really important on the polygon, when they're connected, you have a paint mode set to merge. You need to change this to maximum if you use the settings motion blur tab so you don't get any weirdness, right? If you leave this set to merge and you turn motion blur on the masks themselves, you're going to have issues. But we're going to keep this tutorial simple today and not do multiple shapes. We'll just get rid of that one and move on to the next step. Animate edges. We're talking about keyframing here, but the thing about rotoscoping is you want the least number of keyframes, just like you want the simplest shapes. So let's take a look here at our tracker tool again. I'm going to pick and flick to load that into our viewer, but I will click on our polygon. And the moment you draw a polygon, it automatically sets a keyframe on the frame that you draw. You can see over here on the inspector section, there's a little keyframe there. It indicates that it's ready to start rotoscoping, which means if you go to a different frame and move a point, like I go to the last frame here, 79, it will automatically do the interpolation between those points of the different keyframes in time. It's easier to show it than to talk about it. So what I'll do is I'm going to select this lower left point that is off now at the end frame. And a couple ways to do that. One is to lasso select, so just drag and select. That's nice if you're selecting lots of points. But if you're just selecting one, another thing you can do is hold down the Option or Alt key, and it'll grab whatever point is closest to your cursor. So I don't have to go in here and, like, you know, be super precise on getting that point, which I know can be really tedious. So instead, what you do is you just make sure your cursor is closer to this point than this point up here. Hold Option, and it will pull that along while I'm holding down Option on the keyboard, so I can reposition this point so that I'm not concerned about the point so much, but this edge lines up with where I need things to be. So I'll go up here and fix this top right one as well. Now, I might still have that one selected there, so it's important to deselect first. Just click anywhere and it deselects that other point. Zoom in here, hold Option without even having to get close to that point, and I can move this into pixel level precision. In fact, if I want to be even more precise, I can zoom in further and use the arrow keys on the keyboard. So the way that would work is just, you know, up, down, left, right. We'll move that 1 pixel at a time, and you can use Command Control and do like quarter level pixels and get really precise. So now I only have set 2 new points on 1 new keyframe for that shape, and you can see it is really sticking much nicer without having to really deal with all these big bobbles and shakes and stuff. But I do want to kind of go through here and do a little bit in between. So the idea is divide and conquer. So divide and conquer means we'll do the furthest extremities, and then we'll kind of go in the middle and fix things in the middle, and then we'll go to the middle of that and fix things there. So I'll go somewhere in the middle, maybe frame 40, see if things are sort of off. They are a little bit right here, so I'll just Option drag that back into place. See if the other corner is still good since I've got a keyframe set here. Move that up. And you can see down here at the bottom of my timeline, that white tick indicates I have a keyframe set there. That was a manually placed keyframe, but because we're using tracking data, we don't have to set nearly as many keyframes because we're combining 2 sets of data together, tracking data and our manual rotoscoping data, right? So there you can see on our stabilized version of the plate, meaning it was set to match move BG only, we have our shape moving along with it just fine. With minimal keyframes, so that's minimal jitter. Now to actually match move this shape, if I load the polygon in here, you know, it's moving a little bit with some of the keyframes that I had set, but it's not moving with the actual shot. So the way we do that is, let's look at the tracker again. We'll take the polygon and plug this into the tracker, and when you do that, it's going to go into the mask channel right away. That's not what you want. See this blue mask channel? Or the mask effect, we're going to undo that, and we actually want this to go into the foreground of the tracker itself, so the green input. It's normally where you might think of putting a screen replacement or putting a mask there instead. So I'm taking the green input of the foreground input of the tracker, taking the output of the polygon, and when I do this, still nothing has really happened yet because we want to change our operation to look at not the background only this time. I want to look at the foreground over the background. And when I look at the foreground over the background, you can actually see the effects. We've got this white block, which is going to be our alpha channel, our mask, our rotomat that we can use for anything we need to cut that thing out. Now, if you want to perfect things a little bit at this state and not at the stabilized plate, you can also take a look at this and say the apply mode, instead of being normal, you could set this to something like overlay or something, and you might be able to sort of, you know, perfect your edges or something. But in our case today, instead of doing that, I'm just going to change this to foreground only. And the thing about things that make things move, so this tracker is really the main thing that's making this mask move, is they have a motion blur switch here in Fusion. So to get that realistic blur that would have happened in real life, the settings tab, motion blur, checkbox, turn that on, and you should be getting motion blur. If you don't see it, right click down here, make sure your motion blur check is enabled, and you should see a difference between motion blur on and off. Just a little bit of anti-aliasing that makes it blend more realistically. Now, if you're doing all your motion mostly with the polygons, again, remember you want to make sure if you have multiple polygons to use the maximum paint mode, so that you don't get weirdness happening with multi-polygons concatenating together. That was a big word. Okay. To make use of this mask and actually apply it, well, let's take a look what we have if we go to the edit page right now. We just have this alpha channel that's just hanging out there. You could use this with inspector properties and use alpha composite layers in here if you wanted to, but in Fusion, there's a matte control tool that's really cool and handy, so you can sort of build stuff in here and layer things as you need to. I'm going to show you how that works by just clicking anywhere in the flow, shift space, matte control. And with the matte control, what's interesting, and this is another great thing about nodes, is you can take multiple outputs from the same piece of footage. And then you're not using your computer like crazy if you just did a copy and paste of the node like you'd think in like an After Effects layer-based workflow. So I'm taking multiple outputs. I'm taking a branch of media in one and throwing that into the background of matte control. And the output of the tracker, I want to go into the foreground of the matte control. So the green foreground is what I want to be taking to put in there, right? Which is this white box. Now, if I take a look at matte control, drag it up into the viewer over here, we're looking at matte control, nothing happens because the defaults for the matte control is to combine nothing. But I want to combine this green foreground alpha, so I'm going to say combine alpha, and that will actually take this alpha channel, put it together with the original footage so we can cut this out and have like a patch, like a separate cutout. You cut with scissors out and stick it on top and glue this on top of a piece of paper, right? But there is a weird thing that's happening right here. If you take a look, these little checkerboard things that are going on, that means it's unpre-multiplied. It means it hasn't done the math necessary to clear the transparency out. So you just hit this button over here called Post Multiply Image, and then that will sort of cut it out. So you've got Combine Alpha, Post Multiply Image. Now you have this patch that could be just sitting nice separately. Now, sorry, I went to the edit page too soon there. The reason you don't see that is because media out is connected to the tracker. If I connect the matte control out to media out, go to edit page. Now you can see how you have this patch here. You could see if you don't want to do any more in Fusion, you don't have to. You could lift this on a layer above, put text in between, put the original footage without the effect underneath. You get the idea. But if you want to go a little further in Fusion today with me, I'll show you how you can merge other copies of the original footage underneath in here. And then we'll go to the color page. We're getting there, right? So the other way we could use this would be, let's say we wanted to do just, let's make a black and white version of the background. So again, I'm just clicking anywhere in the flow over here, shift space, BC for brightness, contrast, return. Take another copy, we'll branch again off the original footage. Let's load our brightness contrast into the viewer so we can see it. And the brightness contrast tool has a saturation control. So let's just bring that down. We've made a black and white image of the full image. And now what if I wanted to just take the patch of it, the color part, and stick that back on top? Well, we've separated everything out, right? So we're splitting the image apart. We need to put it back together. We put things back together with a merge tool. So a shortcut to getting to a merge tool here in Fusion, which is really handy, I'm going to disconnect our current media out, is you take what you want on top, the output of what you want on top, connect it to the output of what you want on the bottom, and it makes a merge. So let me show you how this works. So the output of the matte control, which is this little dot here, so it's always the rectangle that's gray, to the output of the brightness contrast, I release, it makes a merge. The green is our foreground, yellow is our background. If I look at the results, we sort of glued those back together. One was unaffected cut out, and then the other one was a color corrected version. Yes, I know you can use mask effect inputs on this to separate it, but that's not the point of this. The point is I want to show you how you can separate a patch so you can insert anything you need to in between it, or isolate different pieces of footage and combine them to make a composite here in Fusion. Now to get this back to the edit page, it's simple. You just go straight to media out and you can see the results here on the edit page. But what if I want to work on just the color for this in the color page? Well, that's where a new media out comes into play. So under Fusion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead at this point. You can get an idea what the flow looks like here. I'm going to delete this brightness contrast, the matte control, the merge, because what I want to do is I want to have the original footage, media in one, going straight to media out one, which means it's unaffected, which means if I go to the color page, I still have the full image to work on. But I want to get access to the alpha channel we just made, the matte. So if in the Fusion page, I click anywhere in the flow and I shift space, I say media out. That gives me another media out. This media out has a special index up here in the upper right. That's index 1 versus the media out one is index 0. Okay, so the importance of these is when we go to the color page, now we do have a media out 2. I don't have anything plugged in yet. That's why it's throwing this warning at me. But if I right click in over here and I say add source in the flow for the color page, so add source, this gives me a new media source, which is the media out 2 from the Fusion page. So check this out. On Fusion, if I take the output of the tracker, which is just the alpha matte, right? It's just this black and white grayscale matte, going straight to the media out. We don't even have to use a bitmap or nothing, right? Go straight to the color page. If I want to make a drastic color change to this image here, maybe I'll use the hue, change the image color, and then I want to go into the mask input from that second source I made. There we go. And you can even see the matte down here in the key. If you want to flop it here, you can with the invert. You have so much control with using mattes that are created, first tracked in Fusion, and then later you do the polygon second. So it's kind of a reverse workflow from if you're used to color page, you usually draw the shape and then you track the shape. Here in Fusion, if you want to, you can stabilize the footage, draw the polygon on it on the stabilized version, and then put the motion back in by changing your tracker set to operation match move FG only. Welcome if you're new here. I really appreciate you. I'm Chadwick, and because there's so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.